What's up, everybody? Welcome to the College Football Playoff Reaction Show. We're live here. Just got the rankings. Miami has moved up to number 12, jumping Utah. Vanderbilt, which I was a little worried about, did not jump Miami or Utah after an impressive win against Kentucky. So really, any result that you would have hoped for today, you saw. Obviously, everybody wants Miami to jump Notre Dame, but that has not happened yet. I feel like they're kicking the can down the road, or some others would say they've already made that decision, talking about how good Notre Dame is. We'll see. I think there's a whole slew of results that need to come in, and then we will see what happens with once the dust settles. Obviously, key part of this is Miami needs to beat Pitt and play well going into the real discussions. My take on this whole thing when it comes to Notre Dame, I mean, we can get into the head-to-head. That's obviously the truth. The fact that Miami not only beat them, but looked better than them. But I think we are not talking enough about how Notre Dame is a can crusher. They beat Syracuse team with no quarterback, a really pathetic team by a lot. Congrats. They played two real teams to start the season, and they were 0-2. I think the statement from Yarechek, or whatever the ball guy's name is, that I take the most issue with is he said that Notre Dame's been consistent from beginning to end. Now, call me old-fashioned, but starting 0-2 to me is not very consistent. Usually in college football, starting 0-2 is catastrophic. Even in the NFL, starting 0-2 is considered catastrophic. So that statement's obviously absurd, and clearly there is a bias towards Notre Dame to ignore reality, because there's no planet on Earth. There's no planet, certainly not this planet, where you will say that a 0-2 start is being consistent, but that's fine. I think, again, the narrative, we know the head-to-head story. I think the narrative needs to be about how Notre Dame has not beaten anybody. Their best win, their only good win, was USC, who wants to fire their coach. They've lost about 14 games in the last 3 years. As Dan Lanning very eloquently put it when he was talking to his Oregon team before they beat USC by multiple scores, USC is a dead program and really just living off the helmet. Take off the helmet, they're any other random ACC team or Big 12 team. They're nothing special. So we'll see how it all shakes out. I think the important things that could have happened today were done, which is Miami, again, jumping Utah and keeping Vandy at bay. They weren't going to jump Notre Dame today. That was not going to happen. BYU, they weren't going to jump BYU. There's no reason to. BYU actually had a good win this weekend, so they're not going to jump BYU. I think BYU, Texas Tech, that'll sort itself out. You hope that Texas Tech just beats BYU again, knocks BYU out of the picture. And then you need some help here with some of these other teams just to make it cleaner. I think Auburn, Alabama, clearly that's one that you look at. Oklahoma against LSU. Either one of those, I think, will help you quite a bit. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Lane Kiffin, that whole drama. Could that cause some weird stuff to happen in the Egg Bowl? That's a weird situation always. I think a 2-loss Ole Miss team, their resume doesn't look very good. And losing the coach, that's an easy team to drop pretty big. So I think the SEC will really hold the key, and then nothing crazy happening in the Big 12. But I think Miami is moving in the right direction, and it really comes down to Miami beating Pitt and playing well. That was very important to hear them talk about Carson Beck playing better, the offense playing better, because they lay that out as, hey, we want to see how they're going to play. And Miami's been doing that so far. Obviously, got to keep it going here into the Pitt game. Let's see what we got here. Dizzy Dean saying Warren Sapp must have banged Galloway's wife the way he hates on Miami. Yeah, I mean, Galloway. When he says Notre Dame's is a different team than they were in the beginning of the season, I would ask, how is Notre Dame different? Did their quarterback, yeah, he's older. He played good against Miami. He wasn't the problem against Miami. He was actually the best player against Miami. Did they find new offensive tackles? Because the guys they had got completely humiliated by Ruben Bain and Akeem Messidor. I think it's the same guys. I don't think they've gotten any bigger or stronger. I think they're the same guys that got sandwiched into CJ Carr. Defense, which Notre Dame felt was a weakness when Miami and Texas A&M did what they want. Suddenly it's a good defense because they're playing bad teams. Funny how that works. Again, I don't think Notre Dame's changed. I think the difference between Notre Dame now and Notre Dame at the beginning of the season is Notre Dame at the beginning of the season was playing real teams. So when you play real teams, you tend to look worse. I don't think, and I've not heard this articulated by any of those people in suits, how is Notre Dame better than they were at the beginning of the year? Maybe someone in the comments could let me know how Notre Dame is better. All I see is a team that's playing worse teams. When that defense played Texas A&M, they got run out the building. A Miami offense that was inconsistent, protected the ball. Beck didn't get touched, made some big plays. We ran when we needed to, and then defeated Notre Dame. The offensive line, clearly we know that the Miami defensive line is a superior unit. That's why they smashed them. So Jeremiah Love, did he get better? Look at Jeremiah Love, who I believe is considered a Heisman Trophy candidate now. Look at his first 2 weeks. So let's look at the game log of Jeremiah Love. And by the way, I think Jeremiah Love's a fantastic player. I think he's a future pro, very explosive. But when you look at his game log, and I'll pull it up right here, I think you'll see why he's better now. And the reason he's better, look at the teams he's playing. I mean, you don't break 100 against Miami. You get 33 yards against Miami, 94 against Texas A&M, 4.1 to carry, and then run up the score against some bum teams. So that's basically how it is. Let me know, by the way, let me know how I'm coming in, if I need to change my connection on the stream. But yeah, same team. That's what I'm saying here. Yeah, Notre Dame was in a dogfight in the fourth quarter with BC. Also 10-7 when they played against NC State. Heading into half, Miami destroyed that NC State team quite early in the game. So Sergio saying their strength of schedule being better than Miami. Yeah, the strength of schedule is better than Miami. They lost to the teams that made the strength of schedule good. So, that's yeah, the strength of schedule's good because they played Miami, Texas A&M. The problem is they lost. So, I mean, congrats for that. But again, that's when you talk about quality wins versus bad losses. Although I don't see how SMU is a bad loss. They're ranked pretty close to where USC is ranked, and USC is Notre Dame's only good win, but we lost to them and it's a bad loss, and they're ranked right next to USC. Explain that one to me. But anyways, going through the rankings here. Ohio State, number 1. Indiana, number 2. Texas A&M, number 3. Georgia, number 4. Texas Tech, number 5. Oregon, number 6. I would agree with all those. Ole Miss, number 7. I think on ranking, you say that's right. But I think if Ole Miss loses to Mississippi State, I think their gravity would knock them out of the playoff because they're going in the wrong direction. Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Alabama, BYU, and then University of Miami. And I think when it comes to, let me just get this cleared here. When you talk about the BYU situation, they just lose to Texas Tech, and then Miami goes in. I think into that spot. I think some good news. Pitt moving up in the rankings. You have SMU moving up in the rankings. Both were not ranked last time. So really the news is good as it can be here in this situation. But ultimately, the Notre Dame discussion still has not been discussed properly, which I think, aside from Booger McFarland, who said very clearly, turn on the tape, see who's better. All right, looks like my connection's a little off here. Yeah, let me change this real quick. I might drop for a second, so bear with me. Let me get this connection right. Give me 1 second here. As I switch. All right, how am I doing now? Let's see. I'm back to normal. All right, El Rico asking my question. If we win and someone from the top 10 loses and someone outside the top 12 is a big win, could they jump Miami? I don't think so at this point. I think the Vanderbilt ranking has protected us there. Knox Kane, glad to hear committee chair called out Beck for playing well. I think that was a good comment there. Go Reyes says Miami head-to-head against Notre Dame. Playoff game is about to happen if we win Saturday. Knox Kane says we need one team ahead of us to fall back. If it goes chalk, we could still be left out. No, we certainly could be left out. I mean, I don't think anybody knows how this thing's going to go. DZ Dean saying elitist fives come from the committee, old boys club. I want to know why it's a given that the SEC gets 5 teams. The SEC has not been very dominant this year. Like, tell me in the comments, who's the SEC beaten out of conference? That's what I struggle with, is like, why are there automatically 5 SEC teams in? They haven't beaten anybody except each other. Like, did I miss any out-of-state SEC wins? If I did, let me know in the comments. I know when Miami played an SEC team, it was a bloodbath, one of the easiest teams on our schedule. So Certainly Ole Miss and Georgia had more problems with UF than Miami did. But yeah, let me know if there's any out-of-state SEC wins I'm neglecting. I saw Alabama go against Florida State and got blown out quite handily. Wasn't even as close as the score would indicate, and it was still a 2-touchdown win. So again, if there was a SEC, like I guess LSU beat Clemson, 2 bad teams, great. I mean, I don't know what out-of-conference win the SEC got that gives them that credibility. Now, look, the ACC hasn't done great out of conference with the exception of one team, the University of Miami, which went and beat Notre Dame physically. Goes to the Von Donaldson, says the TV channel that runs the playoff is financially invested in the SEC. That's no question. That's that should be obvious here. Oh, that's a good one here. Yeah, Texas A&M against Notre Dame. Yeah, that's a good one by Knox. That is a good one. I mean, Texas A&M certainly deserves to be in the game. I mean, they are a playoff team all day. But again, that win is the same win Miami had. So, it's not like the SEC's been dominant out of conference. Their defense is not what it used to be. Their defensive line is not where it needs to be as a collectively, or like in these teams, like who's Alabama's best D lineman, who's Georgia's best D lineman. They're just not as good up front as they've been in the past. I think the SEC's come back to earth a little bit. You'll see that in this tournament. I think if Miami gets in this tournament, quite frankly, I want those SEC teams. I would love for Miami to play Alabama or Georgia or some of these teams that are a little weak up front, because I think it's the opposite of how you would have liked this matchup in the past, where you would say, oh, wow, SEC, they're going to beat teams with their defensive line. I think it's the opposite now. I think if you're Miami, you would love, love, love to play Alabama, who can't run the ball and who really is not going to threaten the passer like they did in the past. I'd love to play Georgia, which has 0 pass rush. I'd love to play those teams about Miami. Ole Miss is really not that good of a team. They've overachieved. You give them the spot because they only have 1 loss. They've overachieved. Good coaching job by Kiffin, who might not even be the coach, by the way, by the time the playoffs start. You can't take them out with 1 loss. But if they lose to Mississippi State, I think they're gone. That's one thing I would say as far as like all these. Obviously, Alabama loses, they're gone. They got 2 losses, 3 losses. Oklahoma loses, they're gone. I think if Ole Miss joins the 2-loss club, I think they go to the back of the line of the 2-loss club if they lose to Mississippi State. So that's a result I would watch very, very closely. Yeah, Oklahoma. I mean, obviously, I'd love to play Oklahoma. They can't score. So SEC, to me, is the weakest of these teams that we're talking about between Big Ten and SEC. Oregon's very good. I think Indiana's very good. Obviously, Ohio State's the defending champ. So I think the Big 12, even though they'll have less teams, is actually, those teams are better than what the SEC has to offer. So again, the SEC having 5 teams automatically, I'm just not sure what the rationale is. They've beaten some good teams, each other. Like they've beaten on each other. It's not like they've gone out of conference and performed at an extremely high level. So that's kind of where I'm at on the SEC. Bagging Up says, Trench is slightly overrated. Bama proven you don't need to be a lead in the trenches to put up points and win games. Bagging Up, Alabama won championships for 20 years. You know when they stopped winning championships? When the trenches went downhill. That's why they didn't make the playoffs last year. That's why they just lost to Oklahoma. That's why they got blown out by FSU, a team that's 2-5 in the ACC. So I don't think trenches are overrated at all. I think Bama is just not as good as they used to be. That's why they got blown out by FSU, a team that's 2-5 in the ACC. Let's see here. Grizz Farmers. Is Joey Galloway the biggest hater you've ever seen? I mean, I think that's just his style. He picks a side. He just kind of has that attitude. It's kind of salty guy. That's his gimmick. It's whatever. I mean, but Booger McFarland was fighting for us there. Yes, Lexi says SEC insinuating that they should have 6 playoffs teams just so we give in to having them 5 as a compromise. Yeah, I mean, make the whole tournament the SEC. It's a joke. They aren't what they used to be. That's why they didn't win the championship last year. That's why they didn't win the championship the day before that. Bagging Up asking, how are Indy's trenches? I mean, they play well above their talent level. I'll tell you that. They play really, really good, stopping the run, protecting Mendoza. They're not elated with first rounders, but they are very, very good. Texas Tech, certainly a team that improved their trenches that allowed them to rise to the top 5. See, Nick Watson, they have Miami D. Sadly, D-Money's been right on the subject. Probably, I just don't see us getting in. Or sadly, Pete has been right on the subject. I don't see us getting with a lot of help. I don't think we need a lot of help. I think, any one of those results goes our way, we're in. Now, those are all underdogs. I think the most important result, and this is not exactly breaking news, Miami's got to play well against Pitt on Saturday. Miami plays well against Pitt. They will win handily. And we're feeling pretty good. If Miami doesn't play well against Pitt, it'll be a tight game. Could go either way. And if you lose, it's a disaster. So Miami just got to play ball. Command Breezy says three loss Bama team should not get in. No, if Bama loses to Auburn, they're out. That wouldn't even be a question. I agree with Sean here. We should only schedule William and Mary the first 4 weeks of the season. I agree. I mean, why play against a Notre Dame if it doesn't help you? We'd be better off with one loss. Maybe we are better shape for the ACC if we're not, going in that incredible gauntlet we had to start the year out of tough deals. Let's see here. Kirk says UMB's Pitt in their top 10 next week. Very possible. Again, we got to see how it all plays out. ACC's been a joke. Yeah, that's unfortunately the case. Yeah, play Army, Navy, and Space Force every year. I agree. I would love Notre Dame's schedule. They play 2 tough teams, they lose them, and they win the rest, and they're in. What a life. Storming back says SEC versus other power conferences, 59-19. Not to defend those clowns, but they are still the best. I mean, but they played any of the top teams. The Big Ten's been taking them to school. Notre Dame, that was a big win for sure for Texas A&M. I know Texas played Texas to Ohio State. They lost. Again, Florida got beat pillar to post by Miami. Alabama got beat pillar to post by FSU. I'm trying to think of the other top teams. We'll see Georgia against Georgia Tech here this weekend. Just there weren't that many marquee games out of state. And I just think that, or out of conference. And I think SEC, when you look at the makeup of the teams, if I say who has the best defensive line, which was always, again, SEC was always the best because they had the best defensive line. That's why they won so many championships. When Clemson won their championships, is because they had gotten better defensive linemen. When FSU won, same thing. Who are the good defensive linemen in the SEC? I know Missouri's got 2. They're not in this conversation. Texas Tech certainly has 2. They're in the Big 12. Miami has theirs. Clemson has theirs. I just think the trench disparity is gone. And when you remove that, SEC is a whole different conference. They can lose to anybody. They beat up on some of the lower teams in the SEC, of which there are many. But when you take them outside the conference, it gets a lot different. Let's see here. Yeah, Rico says SEC only plays like Wisconsin, not the top. Yeah, they haven't played any top teams. The one would be Texas A&M or Notre Dame. And look, Texas A&M is the best team in the SEC. That's why they're undefeated. David Eisenberg said the committee chair flat out said they believe ND is a better team than Miami. Unfortunately, Miami will need Bama. Look, that's obviously a very realistic way to read it. I think the head-to-head will get heavy once they get a little closer to the decision, because these guys are bureaucrats and all they care about is public pressure. These guys are not, anything but school administrators. Those people just go with the wind. And once the pressure gets high, we'll see how they react. I don't have a lot of faith in them being particularly strong in their opinions. I think they do what's going to get the least resistance, and they do things that they're incentivized to do because they're bureaucrats. That's what they do. There's nothing principled about them. I think if there's a lot of pressure with the head-to-head stuff, media-wise, once Miami gets through that, they're not going to want to discredit their whole thing. The BCS left Miami out because of head-to-head, and now when you say BCS, it's considered a joke. 25 years later. True or not true? When you say BCS now, it's considered a complete joke. By the way, 3,000 on, man. I appreciate everybody's support. BCS is a dirty word. The reason BCS is a dirty word is because they left out Miami head-to-head, and no one ever let them forget it. So if this committee wants to be remembered like the BCS, they can do the same thing the BCS did. We'll see what happens. Miami has to beat Pitt, play well, and then put the decision in their hands. But as far as Miami, Notre Dame, simple fact, it's not that Miami beat Notre Dame head-to-head, which of course they did. It's that Miami beat up Notre Dame head-to-head. And that's, I think, the word that needs to be used. Forget beat. Beat up. Should have been worse. Tackles, getting knocked on their butts, doing moonsaults, moonwalking. I mean, look at, like, you wanted to do a blooper reel of Notre Dame's tackles that day, you could, because they were just getting flat out abused. Jeremiah Love did nothing. They got no pressure. Miami ran the ball when they wanted. Miami was the better team. Should have won by more. It was not a fluke in any way. No one watching with the old eye test thought it was a fluke. And the only reason Notre Dame looks better now than they did when they were getting beat up by Miami is because they're playing tomato cans. So we can support can crushers, or we can support the teams that win in the big games, which is the Miami Hurricanes. That's right. As Real Reese points out, all of Notre Dame's worst grades in history were against Miami in that game. But, eye test. Anyways, I got to relax. That's why I'm drinking a BUZZN right here. BUZZN. Remember, drinkbuzzn.com. BUZZN. 7.5 milligrams of real THC. If you need to take the stress out from this ridiculous process, these BCS flashbacks, again, drink BUZZN. That's BUZZN. Let's see if I can get it in there on the camera. There, let's go. BUZZN with the BUZZN. 7.5 milligrams of real THC. You can get it at drinkbuzzn.com, or you can get it at Big Daddy's Liquors. And don't forget about my boy, the OrchidMan. If you have landscaping needs, residential, commercial, you name it, OrchidMan, ORCHID man. That's ORCHID man for all your landscaping needs. These are South Florida's official landscape artisans, from Palm Beach all the way down to the Florida Keys. They'll take care of all the dirty work, the tree stump grinding, the fertilizing, the irrigation, you name it. OrchidMan Florida, ORCHID man, Florida.com. Let's see what we got here. El Rico says win, 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 no matter what. Everyone's hands go up and they stay there. Win and look good. Let them make the decision. Let the committee defend that decision and see what metrics they use. I'm telling you, right now they're kicking the can down the road because they don't have to do anything. Let's see what happens when they are faced with a 10-2 Miami with that resume, finishing strong, beating Pitt, and then we'll see what the conversation is. Again, remember to like and subscribe. There it is, my guy bagging up. ORCHID man, best in the business. All right, fellas, I'll be back here tomorrow morning, I believe, and then certainly we'll do the show with Mike at 1 o'clock, I believe, is going to be the show with Mike Ryan. Sure, he'll have thoughts at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Remember to like and subscribe to the show. Go Canes.